in Discord, in the environment art here. Um, it's all these guys. So the latest one I uploaded was from Monday. Your collision basics is that one, and the first one is yeah, like the gray box recap.
Okay, thank you. I missed that information.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No,
Um,
it's my fault.
um, yeah, it should all be there in a playlist called FG 2020. Um, I think it's all up there. Yep. All right. Um,
So, is the election from Friday up yet?
no, it's still not up. I'm sorry about that. I'm just gonna post it as is. Well, I intended to edit it a bit because I was so like sleep deprived, so it was a lot of rambling. But I will just I realized I don't have time to do something like that, so I will just upload it
Okay.
straight up, and
Okay,
I'll
you
have
can
to stand for
view
it.
you can view videos on YouTube on higher speed, so
Oh yeah, cool.
people can do that.
Perfect. All right. One, two. Oh, um, yeah, I will start. Okay, so about optimization. Um, does anybody remember what the shortcut for wireframe is? So uh, one neat trick, because I like hanging out in Unreal a lot. Uh, you can actually uh, build your stuff like completely unoptimized and then just make textures of it. Um, and I'm going to show you how. Uh, so this is a 3D asset that we made like 2 weeks ago, something, um, which is completely unoptimized. So it has like 700 materials and yeah, lots of triangles. Because just made it in here and combined the meshes. Um, I mean, you can do that, and but then you always have to go into your like DCC, like Maya or something, to clean it up, and just remove all the duplicate material slots and all that. But anyway, this one here, the camera-looking thing, is a 2D scene capture. My baby. Um, and what it does is it makes like 2D images of your scene. So you can use it for stuff like for real-time stuff, like having a. I think there's a blueprint example, old one in Unreal that's uh, surveillance camera, for instance, or something like that. But you can also do like capturing the normals and the color, base color of your object. Um, so it's a few things to think about. Um, you need to do a mask version because I couldn't find at least the mask or like the alpha.
Just a quick thing.
Yep.
I needed to fix something. Can you remind me again what it is you're teaching us right now?
Oh yeah, how to make like a ultra like a imposter style asset from your high res. So if you're gonna make like if you want to paint a million trees, you want them to be like one quad each,
Mm.
not 1 million. Um, so an easy way to do that, to create this, if you want something that really matches your Unreal asset, you can actually make textures inside Unreal. So I'm actually going to just throw in a like a sphere in here too. Make it bigger. All right. So here's my. I wish I could enlarge my screen. Let's do this. All right. So here's a render target. I will actually set it up from scratch so you get it all in one place. Right. So clean scene. Yep. Save it. Okay. Insert your high-res object. Place it at the center. I'm putting in a directional light just to see what I'm doing. Yep, and insert a 2D screen, 2D capture like this. Place it back here. Then you need a render target for this one to render to. So in the details panel here, go to texture target and click where it says none, and up here you can create a new, like the render target. Boom. And you need to place it somewhere. So I will just put it in textures and call it demo RT for render target. And like you can see here, immediately it shows up a dot there. Oops. So it's actually rendering my scene. I can put some weird material on it. So it's rendering a texture of my scene here. Right now it's perspective. For textures, you want to use orthographic, and then you can change the orthographic width in units here, and this one will update. So you're actually making a live texture from your world. And down here is some options. I don't know why the legacy is the default one, but I use render scene primitives. And here is like scene color HDR, has a high dynamic range, RGB, and inverted opacity in alpha. And also down here you have stuff like normals in RGB. So here you're getting actually a normal map texture from your scene. And you can also get a depth. I have not managed to get this one to work properly, but I will see if I can do that live. All right, so let's start with the color. And here you have, if you have deferred renderer, which is recommended for making this, it's required for making this, then you can choose base color here, so you don't have to, it doesn't consider the lighting, you just output the base color. And then you can just right click your render target here and create static texture. And what it has done is it has created this like a regular whoops. Thank you. It's actually it's here somewhere. Let me put it on a plane. Plane. empty material. All right, yeah, so it's there. That's the first one. Normal. Just select normal down here, and the render target will update. Just right click again, create static texture, and you get this normal map. So hold T, press here, get the texture, and I always put the flatten normal. It's not necessary, but like that. It's inverted. See if we can fix this quickly. Oh, normal. And also normal map. Wait for a bit. Okay. Normal.
Does it need to be an RGB?
Yeah.
Like on the texture, like sRGB, and it's not marked.
It should not be. Like for
Okay.
masks, and like data maps, like roughness or like any stuff like that. Anything that's not color should be not sRGB. It should be.
I always get confused by that because since normal maps can be so colorful, but they don't have color.
Yeah. No, actually, this is a big one because if you, for instance, output your textures from Substance Painter, for instance, and it inputs it as a regular color map, this one will be checked, and that means because sRGB is logarithmic storage of the color, so it's not linear, which means that your roughness, for instance, will not match what you see in Substance Painter. So it's a very important setting, and yeah, only color maps should have it checked. I'm missing something here. Where do you set the normal? Typical me. Normal. Text group, well, normal. What? What's going on? Somewhere in here. Please, someone, if you know the answer, help me out there. Whatever. I want to fix this. There's always something I haven't prepared. So, all right, for now, I will just I will uncheck the normal here and just use color. Linear color should be normal. Yeah, normal. Okay, thank you. Compile. It looks a little bit strange. Probably the R channel is flipped. Flip it. So funny, I did this like right this morning. Now I'm doing something wrong. I
When
just
you have to show other people, it's then that it doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean the demo, the problems with demos. Or not always. A lot of time I'm quite lucky, but yeah. Uh, yeah. There. So digital production, there's always stuff that can go wrong. Um, so yeah. It's actually a little shader exercise because it's completely inverted. So I think we can do this. Multiply by -1. See what happens. Wish me luck. Oh yeah, it worked. So since the normal is a vector, you can flip it by multiply it by -1, and it would point in like for this one, it would just simply point in the opposite direction if you flip it. So it will look like that instead. All right. So you could stay here because now you made like a really cheap version of your asset that you could use with Foliage Painter or whatever. You could, of course, if you're making something like a tree, make another scene capture and put it on the side here and make two and make a cross, like a crossing plane. So it looks good from, you know, two angles. And one thing about this, a lot of times it's not necessary for foliage stuff because you get the branches and all that messed up. But sometimes you want to hide the plane when you get to these kind of sharp angles like this, and you can use that Fresnel um, uh, node to do that. So let's put it in color to show what's going on. So now it gets white when I'm at the like hard angles. So I will invert it, 1 minus. Inverting a vector, like a direction or something, you multiply with -1. Inverting a 0 to 1 number, you do 1 minus. So if you have like 0.9 and you invert that, if it's an opacity or something, if you do 1 minus, you will get 0.1. So that's the So here it gets black when I'm at these sharp angles. So putting that into opacity and opacity mask, making this shader translucent. And it disappears when I get to these angles here. Using the exponent, you can adjust like how it disappears. So now it fades earlier. So now it's almost fully visible, and now it's invisible. So that can be useful for doing like fake 3D objects with textures. Save this. "2D capture." So save all. Yeah, and I mean, if you do it on a tree, this is just a 512 texture, so it's like really kind of low res. But I mean, in the distance, you can make it look like the center one is the 3D tree, and this one, the leftmost is the center tree, and the center one is like 3 planes, and this one is only 1 plane. So. And of course, like I saw some of you do, you can combine this with the 3D method. So you can, of course, make a like stem of the tree in 3D and use branches like this to make populate it or whatever. All right. I'm not gonna dwell on this much more. Beautiful. No, but it's quite quick. I mean, this is 4 quads, and it makes a lot of detail. So in the distance, it's fine. You can also, of course, I didn't get the depth to work, so I can show you a quick one on how to make your own depth shader, because it's quite simple. So put the cube in here and make it kind of deep. Materials, new material, M depth shader, and I will make an instance to be able to change the parameters without recompiling, and go in here. World position gets the world position of the fragment, like pixel or vertex, depending on where you input it here. So vertex in pixel in our case. Then you will need like a minimum distance and maximum distance to tune in your gradient. So convert this. Min distance and max distance. And now we put the max on like 300. And min can be 50. So, and it's always centimeters in a real, so like 50 would be half a meter away, and this is 3 meters. There are some like getting depth straight out, but I usually use the world position. Camera position world space, and this is a little shader exercise. So the world position minus the camera position is the vector that goes between these points, so between the pixel and the camera. And if you get the length of that one, vector length, you get and it's a vector 3 because it's 3D. You get the float number, which is the distance between the camera and the pixel. So since colors map from 0 to 1, we need to remap this, and that's why we had these guys. So, and we want to range from 1 to 0. So what we do is we take this range. So we subtract the min distance from the max distance, and that would get us the like total range. All right. Then we subtract the minimal distance from the length of the entire distance. And then we divide this remaining length by the maximum length, and then we get like a fraction, like how far am I, like halfway between the max distance and my current position. So division. And we clamp that. That means we limit it to the range of 0 to 1. And this one will get what we want, except be inverted, so we get white the further away we go. And we put it on unlit and we compile it. And we wait. Okay, so it's working, but something with my range, that's not right. Yeah, it's much bigger than so here, if you want to make a custom depth map, you will have to tune in. I can put some extra object here. Why not use a foliage painter? Cube. I just want a cube. Cube, and I always copy stuff that I use from the engine to my content folder, because when you pack your project later, or like compile it and make a game of it that runs without the editor, there is an option to not compile with the engine, like the engine content, which is a huge, not huge, but I mean it's like, I don't remember exactly, but it's like 700 megabytes or something. So you don't want that if you don't like, no, you don't want that. So it's good practice to always, if you use like this standard shapes and all that, copy them into your project and use them. And also back to this. Oh, cubes. My cube. Depth. All right. So now I'm just flying around the camera, but usually you would, for the texture creation, you would of course use our 2D capture. make a render targets. Um, find it here. Make it really big. And what you get here is the depth map. I mean, now I can even add it to Masquerade Sphere and all that if I want, but keep it like this. All right, cube, shader. So now I could tune in like the bit. I have to wait. Minimum distance a bit further out. Something like that, and also maximum distance is quite good. And to
I'm
make,
a bit
yep,
confused how you would use this.
like if you want to use like parallax mapping, where you fake depth in a texture, for instance, I can show you the parallax mapping, but depth maps is like how far away from the camera am I, and you can use that. It's like a displacement map or anything like that. And why not show them? Let's make a parallax map. Okay. Okay, I will do it like this. Select. See if I have something with a depth map. Displacement, yep. Okay, so I will make a custom material here just to show it. Parallax mapping. It's really cool. It's like displacement, but instead of actually subdividing the mesh, it offsets the UV. So let's make a nice drawing on this. New. Yeah. Brush something. Swatches. They always change some stuff that why? Okay, so here's your polygon, and it's imagine straight, and here is your kind of high res surface that you have. So if you just have a normal map, it will fake because the normal this pixel is straight out. So what the normal map does is that it says now it's facing this way. So it's just faking the surface normal on the pixel level. But for instance, if you were looking at the scene from over here, very nice camera, old school, you wouldn't actually see this pixel because this one is in front of it. So what parallax mapping does is Oops. Okay, brush. It offsets the UV, so it's a view dependent. Oops, make it the same. So when the viewing direction is like this pixel right here will be this pixel on the texture, and that one will be offsetted to like over here. So it will actually render this pixel at this location, and it does that by offsetting the UVs, like warping the UVs of the mesh. And this makes for a much better depth illusion so the combination of it uses a combination of the height map and the normal map to make a more convincing or more realistic depth rendering. So let's show it. I'll get my textures in. I'll skip the color for clarity. So normal map and displacement map. And I will use a plane. And this very intimidating node, parallax occlusion mapping, height map texture, texture 2D is okay. For some reason it uses the texture object. Can't explain why. Color needs to be something. So let's make it gray or something green. Do do do. It's not yesterday I used this one. Most thing about this one is really intimidating because it has so many inputs and outputs, but you don't have to use all of them. So bear with me. Hope we can get something here. All right, see if I can get this. Vertex hull. Oh, this was a bad idea because a while since I did it, but UV4 parallax occlusion mapping. Here we go. Oops, old one. UDK. Oh, I'll just save this one for the next one. I have to figure it out. I use this one. It's really cool, and it's there is a content example of it also, which is really cool. UE4 content examples, parallax occlusion mapping. Yeah, so anyway, I recommend you to look it up, but I will show it on Friday instead because I need to prepare that. But anyway, that much on depth shaders. But like for this one, if I want to invert this depth shader here, since it's a 0 to 1 color, I'll just do a 1 minus here, like that. And then I will get the dark in the far away and the light close to me. All right. That much for demos. But there's a lot of uses for getting your depth. I mean, if you're making a stylized game and you want like a super simple um, um, fog effect that's not like an actual fog, it's just a blend into a solid color, for instance, then you could use this technique to just lerp in that uh, solid unlit color instead of the shaded color or shaded material that you have in front. And yeah, like numerous other uses. Um, and I mean, this kind of basic stuff, world position and maybe some other position if you're making effects like in the shader, like if you have a ripple effect that's like centered somewhere, you can make like a custom vector here instead. Yeah, keep 0 for now. It will be the origin of the world, and it will all be centered on the origo of the scene like this. So it's very useful for making like special effects or any kind of localized effects. And just to show, if I make a parameter of this one, center, compile it, like R would be X then, so let's put 200. It will move this effect around. All right, so this is a bit of shader tricks and all that, and also making some advanced or some optimized version of your foliage assets. So I will quit the shader stuff here and go into some volumetric effects if you don't have any questions on this. All right. Let's open a scene.
I have a quick question actually.
Yeah.
How would you set up, for example, having this like when you get closer, it would change to like a polygon tree, and when you get further away, it would change to just optimized.
Manual LODs, LODs.
Okay,
So you can
so you could set up LODs for that.
yeah, I mean the old way, which is up till recently, when they didn't have the auto LOD, you had to actually
Yeah.
make them, and then you can just input any mesh. So I don't know if you can combine the methods, but I would just put it on the LOD 5 or whatever.
So you could like just have this last slot be the plane.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Yep. Anything else? All right. Let's close all these guys. And maybe something else. I will actually make a new recording to make my edit